I got something says we're live.
What's up, Cody? He's actually a friend of mine. He actually doesn't really live too far away from where I'm located. All right, so what I'm doing right now is just waiting at least a few minutes because not everybody will tend to jump on right away because
Sure.
people will start to get the notification that we're going live as of right now. So until we get more people to jump on, I just like to sit around, relax, and wait a few minutes.
Okay.
Just in case we get more people coming to visit us.
Sounds good.
And also, just in case I might be like tilting my head back and forth or up and down or that type of stuff, it's mainly because, once in a while when I use LiveStream, it's a little hard to get used to this camera angle, every once in a while.
Well, I'm getting, if I'm not careful, I tilt the screen too far and it looks kind of weird.
I mean, not everything is always going to be perfect, the first time you ever try something new.
Of course not. This is exciting.
Sure is. Mm-hmm. Okay, so looks like we got at least 4 people joining us.
I was at the train show in Allentown yesterday.
Oh, really? And, how was that?
Well, that's a good show. There are a lot of people. They have an early bird special that you can get in at 8 o'clock instead of 9 o'clock. And there's a long line outside just for the early bird. And then you get a free hour before it really gets crowded.
Nice. Okay, guys. So welcome back to the channel for tonight. And thankfully, I'm not alone for tonight's episode. As you can see right next to me, I'm sitting next to the one and only Philip Klopp from TM Books and Videos, Great Toy Train Layouts of America series, as well as some of his video clips from the I Love Toy Train series. So, Phil, welcome to the show tonight. We're really happy to have you on with us.
Nice to be here. I think this is going to be a lot of fun. This is kind of new to me, so I'm learning a lot here tonight.
Definitely. Well, we're really happy to help you out for the first time. All right, so guys, since we're going to be socializing for a little while, feel free to drop me and Phil a couple of questions or comments that you want to ask us throughout the show tonight, because we're going to be on here for a little while once again, and we'll try to get through every question as smoothly as possible, so that way you guys don't have to be left out or anything. We're all in this together, and most importantly, as always, we're here to have fun, like we always do. So you said that the Alton show was good, though, right?
Yes, they do it twice a year, and this is called the spring thaw. But late February is not quite thawing yet, but so it was a little bit of a misnomer. But it's a good show for there's all scales. It's not just O gauge and S gauge. It's all scales, but there's it's held in a big. They call it Agriculture Hall. They have a big fair in Allentown each summer, and then the big exhibit hall. It's kind of like the buildings at York, and some of the other train shows are held in fairgrounds, and this is the same kind of thing.
Very nice. Okay, so I got our first question here. This person actually had the exact same question that I had at the top of my head. So this person wants to know, Phil, how did your love of trains start, and what was your first train? What was the first ever train that you ever collected?
When I was 4 years old, there were orange boxes under the tree in 1951. I was born in 47, and it was a Lionel 2035 freight set. A basic starter set, and I never looked back. It was at 4. I needed some help from my parents to get it running, but it was the typical under the Christmas tree for the next few years, and eventually I was playing with it so much, and next year I got a cattle loader, and the following year the coal loader, and all the different Lionel accessories started showing up, and I finally figured out a way to get a 4x8 sheet of plywood and set it up in the basement so it wouldn't be just a Christmas thing. But it's a story many of us tell, especially at my age.
The whole 9 yards.
Yep.
Okay, so since we're also on this topic, I also do want to add, Phil, I know that you've been in this hobby for a very long time, and I remember you were mentioning to me off screen that your layout started in like the mid 80s or so. Do you think you could tell us a little bit more how about it came to be and how you came up with the design for the entire layout itself?
Well, I've always had layouts wherever I lived, and they've been since well, I was living in Philadelphia for a while. After, well, I start a little bit earlier. I had layouts at home in my parents' home, and then when I had my first job in Philadelphia, I was renting an apartment, and started dating my now wife, and I had a 2-bedroom apartment in Philadelphia. And we were getting to know each other more and more. We hadn't got married yet, and I said, do you mind if I'd put a train layout up in that second bedroom? And she, not being an only child, not having any brothers, says to me today, kiddingly, she never knew what she was getting into, because I put a layout in that bedroom, and we were there for a while, and then we've had lived in 3 houses since, and each of them had a layout. Oh, they kept getting better, and then finally, after well, this is a good story. Some of you might have heard it. I was a probation officer in Philadelphia. My wife worked for an airline. We had good jobs, but we thought it'd be nice to have our own business. We talked about it for a while, and there were a couple of hobby shops in Philadelphia at the time we thought of buying. But to make a long story short, we ended up going to the York, Pennsylvania train meet, which some of you, I'm sure, have been to York or you know about it. There was a guy in the train meet. This is in 1976. Had a little sign on his table, hobby shop for sale. Oh, well, I started talking with him. I said, where is it? He said, Easton, Pennsylvania. And I kind of knew where Easton was. It's about an hour and a half north of Philadelphia. Well, we went up to his business, which was open the next day, and was doing well, a lot of customers. And within 6 months, we quit our jobs, moved to Easton, and went in the hobby business. And so the third house that we've had now living in Easton is where I now live. And that house we ended up building, and we had a builder do it, build it for ourselves. And he was kind of into trains, the architect who designed the house. And so we have a basement that's larger than most basements because it's also under a 2-car garage. So we have as many square feet for trains, which then I planned it that way, as we did for the rest of the house. And, it's worked out. I wanted to do an around-the-room layout, 4 feet out from all the walls, with a peninsula coming into the middle for a yard and some of that stuff. And I had the luxury of being able to have conduit in the concrete floor because I knew where my control panel would be, and I'm going to run a lot of wiring out to the walls. But I could, when we poured the concrete basement, I was able to have them put some piping in there that saved me a lot of long wire runs by designing it that way. But that's how this layout came about. And the one thing I keep telling everyone is what I had in as I say, we built this house. We built this house in 1980, and within 2 or 3 years, I had something presentable. But I'm always changing things. I'm never satisfied with, I look at some things I did 10 years ago that I thought were pretty cool. And now with the different scenery making techniques and stuff that's out there, I can make it a lot better. So I rip up sections of it and redo it.
Absolutely.
So hope that answers the question. I was a little bit lengthy in the answer. I apologize.
No worries. No need for apologies anyway. Like I mentioned earlier, we're always here to have fun. and we always want to stay positive no matter what the case is.
And if when I'm talking, someone wants to interrupt and, please do.
No problem. And I also do want to address for everybody that is watching us, all of us really need to start somewhere. And like they always say, a model train, not just the model train layout, but even if you have like a model train exhibit, it's never done, regardless what you do. Like Phil mentioned, you always want to change stuff every once in a while or make improvements here and there. But, you always want to keep adding on regardless on how long you've been a model railroader your entire life. So once again, a model train layout is never completed. You always want to make sure you add some new things along the way and also make it refreshing at the same time. What's going on, Anthony? What's happening, David? All right, I got a message from Cody again. He says, Phil, it's such an honor to speak with you. And my father and I have rewatched TM books and videos many, many times over the years. We have inspired our model built and our layout as you have with yours in Great Toy Train Layouts of America.
Well, that was an honor to be with those gentlemen when they came to my house. We all sat in the deck together, and from my house, I can see into New Jersey, and there's a steam railroad that runs over there for tourists. And you can, I think at that time of year, you could actually hear the whistles blowing across the river. So we had a nice time and a lot of fun. And there's, if you go on YouTube, if you Google my name and just the word trains, there are a number of videos that people who visited here have taken on their own and published and put them on YouTube, and you can see some neat stuff that some of it I didn't even know was there until I did what I just said, and to see what was out there. And there's some real talent put in some of those things, so take a look.
And for those of you guys who are curious to check out those videos, I'll make sure to leave them in the link in the description down below once everything is uploaded.
Sure.
And by the way, I also I was able to check out one of those videos again just recently, and I remember you were asking me about that little figure that one of your what is it, your followers, or one of the guys that you had over to your house that one time. He had like a little figure on the layout here and there. That was one of the old school Lego figures. I'm not really too sure which Lego set it belonged to, but just by looking at it, you can really tell it's one of the old school style of Lego figures that were used in like the early, I want to say like the early 90s to like 2000s or so. I don't think they really make Lego figures like that anymore, but just by looking at, the little figure, the way he's designed, you could really tell it's from the early to late 90s.
Right. Well, I think he enjoyed seeing that, and I'm sure he told me when he was here, but I forgot exactly what the details were. But when I look at it, I think, oh yeah, we remember that little guy he had, and he decided in some of the scenes. Nice to see you, Hudson Train guy. Where do you live?
I'm sure he will definitely have an answer for us in just a few moments.
Yeah, I do. Yeah, please. The other thing that it's difficult to find a way to see it because of copyright. But if you ever watched Charles Osgood, CBS Sunday Morning, when Lionel had its 100th anniversary, Ron Hollander, who was a good buddy of mine at the time and had some connections to the media outlets in New York City, they wanted to do a feature on the 100th anniversary of Lionel, and asked him if he'd participate. And they were going to go out to Mount Clemens, Michigan, and film that layout. And Ron told them, well, they have a layout in Easton, PA, not that far from New York. So they were out here at my house a whole day. when this thing aired. It's a really good piece on the history of Lionel, the famous people like Joe DiMaggio, the Yankees, and Neil Young, the rock singer, and famous people who've been into trains, Frank Sinatra. Um, but there's a segment in there that they come into my basement and they show my hobby shop, and Ron and I are going back and forth with these people. Osgood himself was never at my house. His staff and his crew was here. They took a lot of video. They were here all day. The whole thing runs about 4 or 5 minutes. The problem in seeing it, though, is that I have a copy that they gave me, but everything's copyrighted. And if you try to even put it on a video and put it on YouTube, it won't work. So, but if you ever get a chance, and it is what it was in, actually, well, it's, right around the year 2000 when the Lionel had that anniversary. But it's a nice, it shows a lot of old pictures of the Lionel factory and stuff like that.
Okay, so I got another question here. It says, I've never seen the room dimensions of your layout. What are, and I like to grasp the size of the room.
Well, it's hard to, it's about 1,300 square feet of actual layout. There's probably another 1,300 square feet of just walk around space for viewers. The layout, it's kind of 3 different sections with the main and center area, and but it's, again, it's around the room. It comes out 4 feet from all of the. Can you see it? Can you guys see it behind me? If I, how well does that work?
I could definitely see the viaduct in the background.
I could even walk around. I wish I'd get. We haven't figured out how to get it to show the view without my face in it. So, well, anyway, let's maybe go with some more questions, and we don't want to waste time trying to figure out how to make it use the front camera.
No worries. All right, so Hudson Train Guy mentions that he's an Alabama guy, so hands down to all the Alabama people out there.
Hands down to you folks. Nice to have
or
you
thumbs
all
up,
aboard.
thumbs up, I should say.
Yes, not right. I didn't mean hands down. Whatever.
Yeah. I've always digged the 671, pulling the 6456 and the variant hoppers in that one scene in the I Love Toy Trains Part 1. One day I ought to venture to that size for the Pittsburgh during New York.
Mm-hmm.
That was definitely a mouthful there.
Try this again. Okay, I'm back.
There we go.
Yep.
Isaiah mentions that he sees the pre-war layout above in the background.
Yeah, that's well. There's the pre-war one is the one that comes down from the ceiling.
Oh, I see it now. Yeah.
And I can lower that if you want to watch it come down sometime. It's kind of cool. That was we have 10-foot high ceilings here, which and I always remember Lionel used to have in some of their publications went along with their catalog, showing a pulley system in a kid's bedroom, so that you could keep your train up year round and just raise it to the ceiling when you weren't playing with trains, and still be able to get in your bed and use it to sleep. And that idea always stuck with me. And we had this high ceiling, and there was a guy working for me in my hobby shop who had an engineering background. I said, how could we get a layout that would rise and lower from the ceiling? We thought of using like a garage door opener, that type of a spring-loaded thing. But he ended up putting together this layout that I can raise and lower, and when it's and that's all standard gauge and tin plate. It's all pre-World War II stuff is on there, and that's maybe before this is over, if Matt tells me it's a good idea. I'll try and lower it and get the camera that you can see it come down, because it's kind of neat.
Definitely. And I'm probably not only speaking for myself, but I know a lot of people out there are still really big into standard gauge.
Sure. Well, this has standard ano on it, and I have a Mark set. I always thought Marks was, uh, you could, if you didn't have, if your parents didn't have a lot of money, you could get a decent Mark set at FW Woolworth, the 5 and 10 cent store or something, and it was for $5 to $10 you get a decent train set. Where Lionel was, they started at 25, 35 and up.
Oh, yeah.
So,
The other thing I also like about Marks, when it comes to their later operating accessories like the diesel fueling station and the switch tower and all that, they had, even though they were mostly just toy-sized, toy trains, they did offer a little bit of a scale, kind of scheme, not as scale like some of the older American Flyer trains were from the S gauge era,
sure.
but they did look realistic enough to have on a post-war layout, or even a more prototypical looking model railroad, whether it's Lionel or Marks or whatever. I think they look good on any size toy train layout.
Sure, they were much more when I was using. I used to deliver newspapers, and I had little ways of earning some money, and I would always, of course, spend it on trains. And we always did our shopping in Reading, which is about 20-mile ride, but it had one store. It was an auto parts place uh, that sold Lionel trains and American Flyer all year round. It wasn't like the big department stores that in the summertime you couldn't buy trains there. So, my parents would always drop me off there when they went shopping. They'd buy me something and then drop me there and pick me up when they're ready to go home. And, I'd end up with a lamppost or or a sign assortment or something that was under $1. And that was nice. Some of the Marks things you could afford a lot more easily, because you could get lampposts from Marks at, you know, twice twice as many for the same amount of cost for small accessories like that.
Indeed. And I remember, what was it? Oh, yeah. I remember when me and my family were still living in New Jersey, we had a model train shop that was about like 5 or 10 minutes away from our house.
Hmm.
So after I graduated high school, I had a lot of free time on my hands. And once in a while, whenever I would be working on the layout, I would be thinking to myself, I wonder what they're doing at the hobby shop right about now. So sometimes during like my weeks off from work or whatever, I would go down there and ride my bike over there to see what was going on. And sometimes I would, look around to see what they have. And once in a while, I might pick out or maybe spot a piece that I think might look really interesting or might look good on my layout. So I would, take a better look at it. And if it looks good and if it worked properly, I would purchase it, and I would bring it home and display it on the layout, and just kind of experiment here and there. Because I always say this a lot on my channel, but whenever you're going into making a model train layout, you want to examine your living space first. It's almost like decorating the kitchen or a living room. You always want to make sure that your train layout really complements, the living space that you live in. So, like, if you ever purchased a new TV or a sofa, you want to experiment here and there, because sometimes if you don't really experiment, then it's just a matter of guessing. Is this going to look here? Is this going to look good over there, or so on?
When I have uh, young kids here, the other thing about this layout that goes up and down into the ceiling is I can also lower it down to the level that 3 and 4 year olds can see it without getting up on a steps or a ladder or something.
Mhm.
And I had a bunch of kids here just a few days ago, and they're able to push the buttons and make the different accessories work. And I have a lot of fun with, it's course, different groups that come to see a layout like mine. Uh, when you have kids, they just love to push the buttons and make the milkman come out and the cattle go around and the coal load and things. They could care less about trains crossing neat bridges and things like that, because once they can dump a load of coal or logs or run the accessories that Lionel made, shoot off the rockets from the the era when the late 50s, where they got everything was missiles and rockets and uh, launching satellites and that kind of stuff. The kids love that stuff.
Or like the time when Lionel introduced the 175 rocket launcher.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, some of that stuff, kids just weren't interested so much in coal loaders and, you know, dumping logs and stuff like that. They wanted, and in some ways Lionel sales wise was starting to decline at that point. Kids were more interested in slot cars and things that other than trains. And I think the peak years for Lionel was really the end of World War II until the late 50s. And the late 50s is when their sales started to decline. And and they kind of made somewhat of a comeback, but isn't quite like it used to be.
I agree. And I would also say that the mid 50s was also not only just difficult time for model trains, but it was also a difficult time for the railroad in general, because during that time, that was the era that automobiles and airplanes were starting to take over as far as going to work or visiting a family member or whatever. So it was really a struggle for the passenger train industry to stay in business.
Sure. Absolutely, and that changed the whole marketplace. I just got a wonderful new book by Roger Karp about the history of Lionel, and looking at it from, he has lots and lots of pictures of old. Yeah, you got it. Yeah, what do you think of it?
I love it. I mean,
Yeah.
This was actually a total surprise for me, because my mom and my dad actually got this for me for Christmas last year.
Okay.
And I was like, I can tell you how much I was like a kid in the candy store. I went up to my mom and my dad. I just gave them like a great big hug from,
Sure.
I don't know how long I've hugged them for, but I couldn't be more happier to receive this.
Well, I just bought mine at Allentown on 2 days ago. So it's I'm not all the way through it yet, but I highly recommend that book, along with All Aboard and Ron Hollander's stuff.
So do I. And I also couldn't be more grateful to be friends with Roger Karp as well, because what was it? I started following classic toy trains around, I want to say it was around probably the same time that I graduated high school. But I've been in contact with him ever since, and I can't really tell you how much of a great guy he is. He's really patient. He really knows his stuff, and he's always willing to help you out in case you have a question about something.
Yeah, you're right. I enjoy knowing those gentlemen.
See, my hometown in Alabama used to have a model train store that had a small Lionel layout, in which they run either model Lionel or MTH Rail King trains. Nice.
I was at the show in Springfield, Massachusetts a few weeks ago, and I'd never been to that show, and I was very impressed. That's quite a display, and I have a friend who lives in Hartford, Connecticut, and I stayed with him, and his wife used to be a classmate of mine, and he and I went to the show. And if you ever get a chance, if you live far away but you ever get a chance to go, that's in a lot of ways it's as good as good as, if not even a little better than York, which I just see him. I think what surprises me is Lionel and some of the big people who used to come to York all the time. They're not coming anymore, but they all had big displays, Woodland Scenics and Scenic Express, and those people who saw a lot of stuff. But at the Springfield, Massachusetts show, they were all there with big and lots of neat modular layouts that guys have put together.
Absolutely. And actually, since we're kind of not seeing any questions right about now, I guess my next question is, what's your opinion on the model train industry today versus back then? Because if I recall, I remember you were mentioning in Great Toy Train Layouts of America that you were always really fond of how Richard Kuhn became the founder and the owner, not necessarily the founder, but how he became the owner of Lionel Trains at the time.
Well, I think we're all grateful to all those people along the way who did what they did because they kept the thing going. I mean, even Fun Dimensions when General Mills took them over. I mean, Lionel was, in bad shape at that time, and they felt there was enough of a nostalgic market that they could appeal to, which worked, and they started remaking the stuff, and it kept getting better and better. Then along comes Richard Kuhn and Neil Young. Neil Young was a great person to have in a hobby like this. And I can remember going to York where Neil would have he'd bring a big semi trailer, and they'd set up a layout in the fairgrounds under a tent. And Neil was always whimsical. He had a son who had a physical disability that had a lot to do with Neil getting involved in making Trainmaster Command Control, because his son could run trains without transformers, just using handheld remotes and things that have all become so common. But Neil was really pushed that early on, and I can just remember him there with his son, who signing autographs and BSing with all of us. He was one of the guys. I think we don't hear so much about him more recently, but and same thing with Richard Kuhn. Richard Kuhn had enough money that he could buy something like Lionel, and I think have a lot of fun with it, and started making some really neat stuff. And Neil had a lot to do with Trainmaster Command Control and getting these much more sophisticated operating systems that trains that could do a lot more. And Mike Wolf, my hats off to Mike Wolf and Maury Klein and some of these people, Bruce Greenberg. That I go way back with some of those guys when they were, just at the very beginnings of their influence on this hobby. Mike. I mean, every company needs good competitors, and so Mike Wolf coming along and Williams and K-Line was good for Lionel.
Absolutely. And now you also have like new companies like Menards that's starting to not only branch out into the company, but they're also coming out with some very affordable model trains, which has always become like a big problem as far as the modern society is for model railroading. Because, as we all know, model railroading is very expensive these days, and it's not as affordable like it used to be.
I think the difference, though, that also is, I think Lionel was always an expensive train.
Mm-hmm.
I think that first set my father bought me was $29.95 in 1952. Now, on the other hand, he probably made $50 a week at his job. So that was a big expense, to have his pay for a week just for a train for me to run around at Christmas time. I have a reproduction of the Lionel State set, the big standard gauge set, and I think that thing cost $75 in the 1930s. So it was really a well-to-do kid's toy. You could buy a decent refrigerator or a used car or something for $75 in those days, and to spend it on a something like a train to run around a Christmas tree. That was big money.
Oh yeah, and it's almost like the time when the 700E came out from Lionel in 1937. Before that, a lot of people assumed the Lionel is just company that's just known for making toys. But Joshua Lionel Cowan wanted to go out and really branch out into the more scale model accuracy. So the 5344 was definitely the locomotive that he wanted to go with because it was his favorite engine. But
Sure.
he also wanted to put a lot of hard work and a lot of effort into making that model. And some might argue that it might not necessarily be 100% scale accurate model due to the fact that it's only got like, what was it? I heard that the original 700E tender had 1,600 rivets, but the Lionel model was only 3 rivets off. But he went out and said, no, I'm not really going to make a small change to my masterpiece. I'm really happy with the way it turned out to be. And I honestly don't blame him for it. And even if you have like the original 700E or the 1990s reproduction or the Vision Line model, like Phil said, Lionel was Lionel was always known for making toy trains, but they always wanted to make sure that the quality was done just right.
And I think another thing that happened is before World War II, plastics were unknown. And the detail that you can mold in plastic, when almost all the trains before World War II are lithographed, and the details and things are not as accurate as you can get molding in plastic. And, they did die casting. You could, die cast metal steam locomotive boilers and stuff like that. But,
or even
Bakelite,
electrics.
What's that?
Or even electrics like the GG1.
Yeah. But, the technology of making things in plastic, there was brass, but that was an expensive part of the hobby. But a lot of, the brass engines had high detail and a lot of, workmanship put into making them. But, the trains before World War II were a lot more toy-like looking. They were bright colors and they looked more like toys. And then they got away from toys and got to make them more and more realistic looking. And
absolutely,
we're up to what we can get today, which is just awesome.
And even though that they did have the toy feel, they still had like a charm of their own. Like some of the models were mostly toy-like, but you can say that some of them were mostly based off of real trains, like the pre-war Hiawatha, for example, or the Flying Yankee, or the Union Pacific M10,000, or the City of Denver. Those are good examples of tin-like toys that were based off of real locomotives.
Sure.
I wouldn't argue with that. I 100% agree with you with that. Whoever is in possession of the standard gauge equipment today, I really do hope that, technology and those mechanical presses, I really do hope that they find themselves in going into the right hands, because I really hate to see for, the standard gauge industry to go to waste.
Well, yeah, it's there's so much happening today that's pretty awesome too with 3D printing and coming up with stuff that you can make with a 3D printer. And I wonder how much that's going to change this hobby too. They're using it a lot for like very accurately detailed loads for flat cars and things and on eBay there's little 3D printed park benches and mailboxes and stuff that you can buy. That a few years ago, that stuff, and people are doing this, not as a, they're doing it just to get creative products out there that used to be much more expensive than now you can make them on your 3D printer.
Oh yeah. And what's also kind of challenging for some people is that sometimes, not a whole lot of collectors are really going to get their hands on a 3D printer. I mean, you might have a 3D pen, but, a 3D printer is a whole different ballpark.
Right, but I'm thinking of the guys that you go on eBay and there's, people who are making little businesses in their homes, making stuff like park benches and signs and, that's, you can. There's a lot of little called cottage industries that people can start their homes and um, using 3D printers, and not everyone has to own one.
Mm-hmm. MTH should go back into making standard gauge trains than just whatever the hell they're doing right now. I mean, it's a little challenging for them because I think, my memory serves me correctly, I think they lost the rights to make standard gauge trains around, what was it, 2019 or so. So it's been more than a while since MTH's last came out with anything standard gauge related.
Mm-hmm. Well, yeah, I'm not sure exactly. I mean, Mike, of course, Mike got rid of it a few years ago, and some of the tooling went to Lionel. Some of it went to other people who used to work for Mike, but have their own businesses. So, but Mike still shows up and is somewhat involved. But I think he's kind of earned his retirement too.
I agree. And let's see. Oh yeah, Anthony also brought up an interesting point. He mentions that Atlas owns the rights to MTH now, and that they still do.
Right, and I think those were deals that they made where they agreed to give the tooling or sell the tooling. I think Mike would have liked to sell the whole company at one point, but that just didn't work out. However, what the reason could have been, but so parts of it now are owned by different individuals, some of whom used to work for Mike and some not.
And even today, now that MTH is running under Atlas's product line, I've been noticing that there haven't been a whole lot of catalogs that have been coming out. And I did remember watching a video from one of the York shows from last year where one of the guys who was working at the Atlas booth actually gave out the answer. He basically said that as much as we would love to put out a new catalog, it's very expensive for us to make one.
Mm-hmm. Well, and now you can do that stuff online so much easier. I think that print media is, just, I think if it's probably all in a decline. Newspapers, whatever you have. I mean, everything you read it online, or you get your news other ways. It's and I'm surprised in some ways Lionel spends the money they do on the catalog.
Mm-hmm.
But
and even for some people, if you wanted to keep up with companies like MTH or Lionel, you always got their emails to thank for that. You also got social media like Facebook and Instagram or whatever to keep up with the products that they're coming out. So MTH is kind of in a little bit of a much different position than they were back in the day.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, they did. They did, in fact, sell some of their tooling to Lionel. I know that the Amtrak, the Amtrak Genesis. I know that's a pretty good example. And they also sold the tooling to, their four. I always forget the wheel configuration, but it was part of their earlier starter sets. The New York Central 2 10-wheeler steam locomotive and a few freight cars. And they also sold the tooling to Lionel in order for them to make the doodle bugs. All right, so it looks like Cody's our main man for pumping out the questions for tonight. So
I was scratch builder kit bash any rolling stock or locomotives. I've scratch built buildings, and that's I've never tried to scratch build cars or locomotives, but buildings I have done a number of them, and I have a drive-in restaurant that's called the Dixie Drive-In, which is a place we used to go and try to pick up girls, and when I was growing up and as a teenager, and I have a little girl that comes out on roller skates, and this is something I bought at a show years ago. And the cars in the parking lot are all, cars from the late '50s, '57 Chevys and Edsels and what have you that were popular in those days. But I got a little. Well, I actually have a dance contest going on. My wife and I like to swing dance.
Oh,
So
really?
we have a dance platform, and I got a number of little motors and pulleys and chain drives and things to make the dancers all move around on this dance floor.
Oh,
And
nice.
then when you push a button, uh, uh, I come on, or Linda, my wife, talks to me, and she says, um, you know, she skates out to my car, and I give her my order. I'll have a burger, fries, and a chocolate shake, and then I said, what time you get off tonight? And she says 11 o'clock. I said, you want to ride my vet? She says, oh, could I?
That's
And
really living in large right there.
and when people push the button, they hear us both. And what it is that sometimes you can get greeting cards that
Mhm.
let you post a little message in the greeting card. Well, I bought a greeting card, but I used this so that I've just figured out a way to get a power supply for it, so that you can have a scene and push a button, and whatever you want to happen there, you just record it on the greeting card little chip, and you can play it. And
Almost similar to those American Flyer passenger stations from back in the day.
yeah, something like that. That. But this is one that I always say the crowd pleasers. When you
Hmm.
have people visiting, that's the stuff they really like. And for a long time, I used to put TV cameras in the engine in the observation car.
Hmm.
And before we got Wi-Fi running in all our homes and so much stuff going on, you could use. There were a number of companies that sold TV cameras that worked pretty well. I mean, Lionel tried to do it one time with a black and white camera that I tried. It never worked that well.
That's right.
But the cameras you could get for a period of time, you could just mount it in the front of an F3 and take out one of the headlights so that the camera could see down the tracks, and put another one in the observation car. And so I had two TV screens that viewers could see the trains coming and going, and the quality was pretty good.
Hmm.
It just deteriorated once you got Wi-Fi, and neighbors all got Wi-Fi and stuff. And this was used a VHS signal, and I haven't gotten it to work as well since. And I understand that Mr. Muffin's Trains has figured out a way to do it. And I'd like to talk to them about what they did exactly, but I kind of miss that, because that was kids that loved to look at the TV screens, and when a train would come out of a tunnel, they'd see themselves.
Absolutely. And also to note that a lot of people don't know this, but if you guys out there remember watching Great Lionel Layouts Part 1 from TM Books and Video, they mentioned that a Lionel originally was going to come out with a Union Pacific rail scope number 3005, but they canceled the project when they found out that the rail scope model that they had out during that time was a very slow seller. But you could still see that Union Pacific rail scope engine depicted on the back of the 1990 Lionel Book 2 catalog.
I think I must have missed that. I know that you can buy. Of course, you can buy trains today that have cameras in the caboose, cupola, or the engines, but I have tried some of those. But unless I walk around with I think my train room's so big that the signal that uses just can't get around. I mean, if I take an iPad or a tablet or iPhone or something and walk around, I can see what the engineer would see pretty well, but it
Mm-hmm.
just doesn't allow much distance.
All right, so I got another question from Isaiah. He wants to know, Phil, what is the oldest item in your collection?
Probably, to be honest with you, I got rid of most of my quote unquote collection. And almost all the stuff I have, with a few exceptions, are things that, I kept a girls set I kept my first set and my second set and my third set that I bought as a kid. And I have a few other on the standard gauge layout. I have a lot of, I have a reproduction state set. Uh, I don't have anything really old. I mean, well, I'll take that back. I have a city of Portland, a city of Denver, in O gauge, uh, and the girls set, and that's about it. I sold much of my collectible stuff because I wanted to. I could justify buying some of these expensive Lionel engines with all the bells and whistles. That selling off some of that stuff, and I also think that's the the prices of trains are getting cheaper because many of us older guys are selling collections and saying retiring, and it's a buyer's market right now. If I go to train shows and you never used to see that many box sets, and now they're all over the place at the big
That is
shows.
true.
Um,
That's definitely true. And especially with a lot of the older post-war stuff, some of the prices have gone down on those as well.
Sure.
Which is very surprising.
Yeah.
Now, I also did spot one comment here. Let me see if I could just find it. And this one is for Phil, especially because I was actually going to mention the same thing earlier before in the video.
Well, I think if you see it today, though there's been a lot of changes. I'm not sure, compared 35 years ago, the Tui and McComas videos I think, and O-Gauge Railroading, they did a video that they were here. O-Gauge Railroading used to be right next door to me almost. I mean, I live in Easton, they had their headquarters in Nazareth, Bethlehem, that area of Pennsylvania, and those towns are all within 10 miles of each other. And I knew Myron Bigger and some of the people at OGR were, we spent a lot of time talking trains, and they've been to my house. Well, no, I don't know. Do you know, Matt, when Neil Young left? I mean, I'm not even sure whether Neil still owns any stock or, interest in the company, whether he's out of it completely or, he may still have a financial interest, but you just don't hear from him that much. I don't see him showing up in York anymore.
Yeah, I don't really hear that much about him, these days either. I know he started working with the company in 1995. Mm-hmm. That's when Richard Kuhn sold the majority of his interest to both Neil Young and I think it was also Martin Davis. But okay. I don't necessarily really recall what year he actually left Lionel. Yeah, if I would have had to take a guess, I would probably say right around the time when Lionel was getting ready to sell a lot of its inventory to overseas. That would probably have to be my best guess on that.
Mm-hmm.
Because for me, I always prefer the golden age of Lionel, not only just the golden age of Lionel, but also Lionel's history. Lionel started producing toy trains in 1901. Well, I can't even speak today. They started making trains in 1900, and their 100th anniversary was in the year 2000, like you said. So right around that time gap is what I consider to be the golden history of Lionel's history.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I had the opportunity just about a year ago to see that fantastic train layout in Hamburg, Germany. That a lot of, if you don't know about this, Google model trains Hamburg. I mean, this thing is in a huge warehouse, and not only are the trains running, but all the vehicles and the airplanes landing and taking off. It's quite an extravaganza. Aren't some of the trains in Great Trains America? Yeah, there's a few, but a lot of them I upgraded and I got the more uh, versions with the legacy. I mean, um, I have trouble running cranes that I can't regulate the speed as precisely as I can with legacy. You know, on my standard gauge and O layout, I use a ZW. But for everything else, I just have 18 volts in the track, and I can get that really smooth startups, and uh, that's so I don't have too much left that you might have seen running in that, in the old I Love Toy Trains.
I still use my ZW as well. And not only do I have my dad's original Lionel ZW, but I also have the ZW that I purchased, when I first started working for the first time. And that was actually from the first paycheck that I ever got.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
All right. So our next question is from my friend Nick. It says, I have a question for Phil. Do you still have the Roanoke electronic,
The
do you still
Roanoke,
have the Roanoke electronic circus sound
no,
animator?
it stopped working, and I posted some stuff in the O Gauge forum, and some people had a few suggestions, but I don't have it anymore. It just stopped working. Although I have some Roanoke just soundboards that play of lumberjacks cutting down a tree, and people at a service station, the lady saying, my car won't start. And you hear the car trying to turn over and it doesn't start. And a few of those where people push buttons. So, but yeah, Roanoke Electronics made some neat stuff, including that circus animator. I miss it, but I don't know what happened to him.
Now, I also want to give a shout out to Visionary Locomotive Works. He was the one that helped not only just helped organize this live stream, but he was the one that helped me get in contact with Phil here. So make sure that you guys give him a really good warm welcome for tonight's episode.
Someone's asking me about, let's see, am I looking for more trains to buy? What I do, what I find myself doing is I'll run an engine for a while, and I really get to like it, and then it's something really cool comes along that I just like change sometimes. So I sell trains on eBay that have some miles on them, and I've found happy customers who have the price is right, and but I use some of that money then to buy some of this newer stuff, and kind of keep upgrading the. I kind of there's some things that I thought, oh, I don't know if I really need that, and then when you get it and you see kind of how cool it is, like having 5 different whistles and 5 different bells, like some of these new locomotives have. Uh, I'm not sure I'm ever going to use it. Once I get it, then I'm using it all the time. So that's what I look to buy, some of the newer stuff. Well, right now my favorite legacy train is I just bought a big boy, and my big boy though is the 2010 version with the legacy that I did some research, and the price was right. I found a nice one with not too many miles on it, and it's running great. But I just thought, well, I should at least for a while, and I'm at some point I may sell it and get something else, but that's I really like the big boy at this point.
So out of all of the trains that you have from Lionel or MTH, which ones do you consider to be the best runners on your layout?
Well, let me think. I have a set of Santa Fe PAs, the legacy with the super bass sound system that blows you almost out of the room. But but I like that. I like that train. I have the Lionel Pacific by War Bonds, nickel plate engine that I have a military train, between Menards cars and MTH military cars with all the tanks and military equipment. That's a favorite train. It runs real well. I have two MTH New Haven rectifiers that are scale that I converted to electric railroad that I'm running. And I have a long train of flat cars with all the different loads on them that I enjoy that particular train a lot.
Nice. All right. Visionary Locomotive Works also mentions that he would also like to give a shout out to his friend, Enter praising Engine 93, and not sure if I can read that.
Yeah.
Times, what's his name?
Enterprise Engineering 93 and Times Senseth, who joined me visiting and shooting. Yeah, that's right. They're the gentlemen who were here that day and made that neat video.
Yes.
That yeah, I thank you to you for making that. That's a very nice video. I'm flattered that it's out there and people can see it.
Two great videos actually. They actually showed the one where they were displaying your entire layout in the video, and they also had the other one where they had the trains running and they were playing the Wabash Cannonball theme song from I Love Toy Trains Part 1.
Yeah. Well, I have a video that once I figure out how to put it on YouTube, I took a video that runs around 15 minutes that it's pretty nice. I have that. I had a Southern Pacific Daylight with that I was really happy with for a while. With all the smoke coming out the cylinders, and it had 5 different smoke units. Mm-hmm. And I tried the New York Central Niagara that had the smoke coming out of the to look like you're going over water troughs with the tender. But the problem with those was that they're really cool when everything worked, but trying to figure out how much smoke is in each smoke unit. Some smoke units are large, some are small, some you're blowing if you blow the whistle a whole lot, and it was a real challenge. And the smoke units weren't that easy to get at to replace the wick and the stuff that's in there. And when I think of if you have an engine with 5 or 6 smoke units, one's going to be dry, one's going to be putting out ground, and it's running on the electronics, and that was a real challenge for me, and I kind of gave up on those 2 engines because I spent more time opening them up and replacing burnt wick, or else cleaning up with a Q-tip smoke that had run down on some of the boards, because it's hard to know how much is in each one.
Not to also mention that the fact that Lionel is making their own version of the Erie Triplex? That was the engine that MTH has always been. So that's the engine that MTH has always made over the past couple of years. But now that Lionel is making their model of the Triplex, you got, like you said, multiple different smoke units. Sometimes one smoke unit would put out more smoke. Sometimes the other smoke unit on the engine will put out less smoke, and so on. And then you also have some of these electrical problems that also really need to be addressed by.
Well, I think smoke units obviously are a real challenge, and yet I think when they work right, they're really neat.
I always say this when anybody asks me, what my favorite style of smoke unit is. I always take mechanical any day of the week. I mean, I do have some of the newer electronic smoke units, but the mechanical stuff, I like to fix that myself. But with the newer technology, a lot of the fan-driven stuff, I always like to leave that to the professionals.
But do you even if you in the older smoke units, do you use wick instead of the pellet? You used to have pellets. You can a long time ago you could convert them to liquid smoke, even though they used to have pellets.
I mean, some of the older post-war engines that I have, they do still require the smoke pellets, and some of the engines that I've worked on, a a few of the locomotives that I have, I do like to keep things original as possible, but also upgrade them at the same time.
Mm-hmm.
Like with some smoke units and some of my engines, some of those I like to, some of those are much easier to work on than others. Like for my 2055, I know of a parts company that I like to order from once in a while. And when the original smoke unit got burnt out, I was able to find a replacement with, reproductions of the original components and parts for that engine. But for my, for example, let's just say my dad's 2035 steam locomotive from Lionel in the 1950s. That train is such a challenge to work on because you got so many parts and components to take apart. And, just getting there to fix a simple smoke unit, I feel like, when I was working on that so many times, I was thinking to myself, I don't know if I really want to be working on that smoke unit so much. So right around the time when me and my folks moved down here to Delaware, and I found out there were more parts places down here, I thought to myself, I think it might be a better idea to upgrade the smoke unit and do one of the newer smoke heating elements instead of replacing it with a reproduction of the original smoke unit that was used for that engine.
Sure. Sure. Let me say this to everybody while I have the opportunity. From time to time I get a call from someone who's from another part of the country, but for some reason they're, going to be traveling east to be close by to me, and I've had some nice visits that way, and I'm certainly open. We're about 75 miles north of Philadelphia, about an hour and a half west of New York City. It's if you're ever close by, give me a call. It could even be spur of the moment. If I'm around, I always enjoy having trained people visit me. So give me a call. I think my numbers and my address and everything's in the various, OGR and I'm in all the 3 different train clubs: TCA, LCCA, LOTS. So you can locate me that way.
All right, so I got another question here that says, aren't there some accessories and animated features on your layout that appeared on Great Toy Train Layouts of America that are still present on your layout today?
Yes, there are, and my favorite one is the building burning down. That I got if you go to theatrical stores, I think even Walmart sells these fog machines. Well, I just took an old Helgen warehouse. It's a big Helgen building. I think it's actually HO scale, but it's big enough that it looks okay in my city. And I have flashing lights of all the fire engines around it, and I took a tin can, cut holes in it, and motorized the one end of it, and put red cellophane on the end so that then that rotates so it looks like there's a fire burning inside. But when I hit the button for the fog machine, smoke just pours out of it. And then I have a little fireman who shoots water from a little pump that is right underneath this building that's on fire. And I just have to keep water in that all the time. But a little pump just pumps up the fire hose, and he's up on the aerial ladder putting water in the top, which of course is channeled right back into the lower basin. But that's one of the the thing. No, and I have a DVD, a CD, not a CD. I'm using MP3 players now.
DVD.
Well, the MP3 players just to make sounds for the sirens and the emergency sirens when this fire is burning. But that's really a lot of fun because nobody expects it, and it really pours out the smoke. If you've ever seen a fog machine, it's not just it almost, you can hardly see the building. It's,
Now
but
that pump does indeed have real water in it, right?
yeah. There's I mean, I have 3 places I have water. I have a water coming down the mountainside next to my ski resort. I have a ski lift that I made using just I made my own ski lift chairs, and I'm still trying to figure out how I could. The big problem with the ski lift is, typically in a ski lift, the
Still there?
okay, I'm back.
There we go.
I'm not sure what happened. Well, anyway, the ski lift. The problem with it is the skiers stay on the lift and come back down. There's no way to get them coming off the lift because you typically, unless you got scared when you got to the top and you didn't think you could ski down, you'd never ride a lift back down. So I wish I could get somehow figure out a way to get the skiers disappear into the mountain when they get to the top, and then have some kind of a way to have simulate skiers actually coming down the slope. And I think that's kind of been on my mind for a couple of years. That eventually I might see an idea and figure out there's a way to do it. But
now you did say that. Correct me if I'm wrong, but you did mention in one of your videos that when you modeled that area, you did brought up the fact that you and your wife used to go skiing. Is that correct?
yeah, I still do. And my favorite ski area is the one in Winter Park, Colorado, where the western end of Moffett Tunnel. And I like that resort because you could always, the Denver and Rio Grande, and later on even Amtrak got involved in running ski trains from Denver
Rio Grande.
up there, and that tunnel is a famous history, and I think next to the Reading Railroad, which was one came through my hometown, that was my favorite. The Rio Grande has always had an interest. That's just a fascinating, lots of very interesting history of that railroad in the state of Colorado, and the silver mining, and some of the wild stuff that went on in those hills and canyons, and that's in fact my family, when I was a kid, we rode out to California, and we rode on the El Capitan from Chicago. We got on the Pennsylvania Railroad in Harrisburg to Chicago, and then we rode the El Capitan to Los Angeles, where I have a number of relatives. But on the way back, we went on the Southern Pacific to Denver, or to Salt Lake City, and then the Denver and Rio Grande through the Laurel Gorge, where in those days you could get out at the bottom of the Laurel Gorge. They would have people get off the train and just walk along the Arkansas rivers roaring through the canyon next to you. And of course, I came home, and in my primitive way, I tried to create Laurel Gorge on the layout I then had in my parents' basement. So
I also do want to add that I would say that my favorite scene on your layout is the one where in Great Toy Train Layouts of America, they showed the general going around that trestle bridge that you made going around the waterfall. And the next shot they showed was the camera looking up at the bridge while the general is going around the trestle bridge at a nice slow speed. I thought that was a really nice shot they managed to accomplish.
You want to see it right now?
Absolutely. I love it.
I'm going to walk over there, and I'm going to turn the power on, and you'll see, and I'll try to get you a good view.
Okay.
I wish I could. I'm trying to get out of the picture here,
Okay, so you
Yes.
said that you did say that you saw the dots again, right?
Yeah, and I see the dots right now.
Okay,
But
so
when I press them, it doesn't switch to the camera.
okay, so what you would have to do is to click on the dots, and right where the little settings icon is, that's where you would have to click on to switch
Okay,
the camera.
I'm going to let's see here. I'm going to click on the dots.
Okay.
Okay, I'm going to go into settings. Okay, I'm going to hit camera. But it's not switching.
All right. After you click on
Okay,
the,
now here we go.
there we go.
Here we go.
There we go. That's what we're looking for. So there it is, guys. Here we got the trestle bridge, we got the waterfall going, and hopefully we should have some trains coming too.
I'm going to take you over to the ski lift.
Okay. That they are, Isaiah. That they are.
Here, this is kind of a new section. Have musicians and skaters.
Well, that's also a nice touch with the Christmas tree flickering in the background too.
Yep. But here I'll give you a view of the this is the Santa Fe PAs that you know, the horseshoe curve. Let's see. Well, someone asked earlier how many square feet there are, and that's where this is the yard area. You'll see in the background there's a cover. There's a roller coaster under there that I don't want dust to get on because it keeps the roller coaster from completing its run. And I'm going to lower the train that comes down from the ceiling.
Well, this is the moment that we've all been waiting for, guys. Now that's what I call a dramatic entrance. Oh, I can see that you also have Gabe the Lamplighter on there from American Flyer.
Just a second. I'm gonna. crane started up and was making all that noise.
Oh, really?
Bring you back to the, here's the standard gauge layout.
Well, it's a good thing you didn't have a train crash.
No, it didn't. But,
It looks like we got the green state set there. I also noticed Mark's military set on the top level there.
yeah, this is, the lighting up above, spotlights, and the nice thing about this layout is I can lower this in order to wire. I just raise it up and I can walk under it and put the wiring underneath. But I have a lot of buttons here for kids to push.
Mm-hmm.
This is the drive-in restaurant.
Oh, I can hear it now. Oh, wow.
This is the roundhouse and turntable. It's a lost turntable.
It's a nice looking roundhouse.
Let's see.
There's the carnival. Now, those are all Lemax accessories, right?
I'm just hard for me to with all the sounds going, but
That's okay.
In the back here, this is one end. This is under my garage.
Mm-hmm.
I built a model of a concrete plant in the Lehigh Valley. Lehigh Valley is known for Bethlehem steel, but Lehigh Portland cement was. We had a lot of concrete mills, and there were over 40 or 50 of them one time because the limestone that was made, for making concrete was lots of it available around here. We had the Chernobyl Unit 2 power plant with a bad accident going on where they have spilled canisters of radioactive waste, and they're cleaning it up here. The guys in the white suits have come out, and there's a crowd of people who are all probably going to die from radiation poisoning.
Oh, boy.
Because they're too close to the disaster. We have the dog catcher. Guys getting arrested.
Nice.
We have Tehachapi Loop, which is
I can see it. Yeah.
Yeah, and they're at Tehachapi Loop. Of course, the rail fans are out, and the NRHS is having all the photographers are standing around waiting for trains to come around the loop, and there's my little ON30. This is the ON30 train and the Canyonlands. We have rock climbers and hikers. But this is, if you're familiar with ON30, it runs on HO track, but the scale, Bachmann makes these engines and equipment for it.
Mm-hmm.
And then this in the military yard. This ship I made on a bandsaw, and that's pretty much from scratch. But it's the ship being unloaded, and the Lionel mobile crane goes back and forth on tracks, and but this is the a military yard with lots of cars being unloaded, and that my collection is pretty much what you see right here. The the hand cars and a couple of
accessories.
yeah.
I also couldn't happen to know. I also couldn't happen to notice the girls' train on the bottom shelf there.
Right. Well, here's my first. The 2035 and the a couple of the number of the accessories, cattle loader, had a gang car, Rio Grande snowplow. Some of that stuff I bought with either got for Christmas gifts, and always liked the New Haven rectifier. That was my second engine, was New Haven, and then the Rio Grande.
There's the Lackawanna.
And the Lackawanna. I never had a Lackawanna as a kid. I just
Really?
bought that since, and it's an engine I've always liked, because we have the Lackawanna's not too far. The Lackawanna came into the Lehigh Valley, and of course I didn't grow up here. I grew up closer between Reading and Lebanon, so Lehigh Valley, Allentown was a little at the far end of the area that I was familiar with.
When I was still going to high school, the train station down from where my school was located, that used to be associated with the Lackawanna Railway back in the day.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. The this train that you're seeing in the picture right now with all the flat cars, that's the the one with the
Could see a lot of cylinders and a lot of track mobiles and flat cars.
yeah. There's this whole train has a lot of neat loaded cars, and there's the K-line fisherman. That guy, if you've ever seen it, I don't have the power turned on because it makes too much. When I turn everything on, there's a lot of noise going on, so I kind of shut things down. Do you hear the hobo singing in the background?
I do.
Well, that's that Lionel hobo car. And I think it's really fun, but it's on all the time, and it keeps playing over and over unless you shut it off, and then next thing you know, someone wants to hear it, and you have to go press the button again. But
that's always fun to see, though. Okay, so I actually got another question in the comments.
Sure, go ahead.
This person wants to know: do you fix any of your legacy trains, or whenever they're broken?
If it's something simple to do, I do. But I have learned more and more not to open some of them up because I get in trouble. They're some of them are a real bear. I replaced the smoke unit, wadding in my Lionel the Warbon's Pacific, and I kind of regretted it because I must have spent 2 hours getting it back together. That was just tricky to. But once it's one of those things. Once I do it one time, next time it's easy to do. But the first time, it's just a matter of how much time I have and I'm willing to put into. The learning curve sometimes is pretty steep.
I think that's also usually a common problem for all of us. Once you open something up and you don't even realize how much work there is that needs to be accomplished with a lot of the electronics, and if you don't really know how to do so, and if you really plan on to work on it anyway, I would just say good luck.
Yeah. Oh, here's the big boy. And, this is, they're the hobos. And,
They must really like putting on a concert for everybody.
this building I scratch built. A guy in York had it, and I just took a picture of it, and it's like a sun-kissed produce unloading thing that nothing's animated. This bad train wreck here, that's the Lionel working crane that works with command control. That's kind of a fun scene for people who like to see that crane moves with command control.
Mm-hmm. There's the oil refinery.
We have Wicked Wanda's back there in the corner. So, anyway.
I've also noticed that the catenary system looks a little bit different this time around.
Well, you know what? I kind of have ups and downs with the catenary. I'm going to turn this off right now. It's, I actually ran off. I used to run trains using the catenary. But the biggest problem is, and here's where maybe I could learn to do a better job, but the catenary, different engines, the pantographs swing out differently depending on the radius of the curve. Mm-hmm. And, you try to get a happy medium where, the GG1s will work okay. The E2 Milwaukee Electrics, those big long engines that are electric, the swing is different on those a little bit. And it's hard to get a consistent, if you're going to run one type of engine all the time, it'd be a lot easier. But between the rectifiers and the E2s and the GG1s, I got to where I was having so much trouble with it. Every now and then, the pantographs would snag, and I had difficulties with it. And so right now, the catenary, it's still there, but I keep the pantograph just a little bit below it, so it's not really touching. Mm-hmm. And that's, I may still make some changes, but in some ways I'm not quite precise enough. That's my personality almost. I think I'm better at scenery, and some I look at some of my track work and things that I could really improve some of it, but. It runs pretty well, but I think I'm better at scenery than in just doing things real precisely and getting every switch working perfectly and not occasionally causing derailments. And that's the challenge for me.
So this next question here that I just noticed in the comments section, it looks like somebody's trying to throw a curveball at you. They want to know, which railroad do you prefer more, the Reading or the Pennsylvania?
In Pennsylvania, which do I prefer? Maybe I don't quite understand. What's my favorite railroad, or maybe help me answer the question a little bit better.
Yeah, this person wants to know, which railroad do you prefer a lot more, the Pennsylvania or the Reading Railroad?
The Reading, because it came through my hometown, and I grew up as a kid watching trains there. I mean, one of the things that when I had my hobby shop that was evident sometimes is that we had people who were model railroaders, but they weren't that too much interested in real trains. They're not the kind of people that if they're approaching a crossing and the lights start flashing, it's, oh wow, I get to see a train go by. It's that's that was always my attitude. I like to ride. I go on train excursions. I've ridden trains all over the world. Had an opportunity to ride even some in Russia and China. And I love to ride trains wherever I go, and long overnight trains that go to exotic places. And uh, so, but my point is that some modelers could care less about the real thing, and some people who are into real trains could care less about modeling.
Hmm.
You know, that they're, it doesn't always, when I had my hobby shop, you know, that people come in, you know, for their magazines about real railroads, but they care less about the miniature ones. But, you know, many of us, I would say maybe half to two-thirds, are, I call it being cross addicted. You know, it's not just, I like the real ones as well as the models.
So do I. It
And
was
so,
actually,
so growing
go
up in
ahead.
Richland, I think that was, you know, my father would, we could go down to the tracks, and in those days, early 50s, they still had watchmen. And the watchman could always, you know, was in a little shack, and he would put the gates down. And I'm really making myself feel ancient here.
Hmm.
But, you know, he would tell you when a train was coming. And so we'd go down there and watch trains. And I think that's where it all got in my blood.
And it was also, I guess you could say it was also a little bit different for me growing up, because the way I kind of got started with trains, which is kind of similar to some of the younger generation, how they got started with trains. When I was younger, I used to love watching the old Thomas the Tank Engine VHS tapes that my
Sure.
parents would get for me, you know, when I was very little. And right around 1997, 1998 is when I first got my first experience into Lionel trains, just by watching I Love Toy Trains from TM Books and Video and Great Toy Train Layouts in America, Great Lionel Layouts. And the love for that really helped grew my interest from not only loving model trains, but also getting more interested into the real thing.
Mm-hmm. Well, that's, and you know, the other thing that's funny sometimes running a hobby shop like I did for 35 years is, you know, you get customers who they want all the latest bells and whistles, and others who they want to run with the ZW and nothing, you know, use regular E units. Uh, and I always said, you know, this is the one time in your life when you get to run your own railroad, and don't let anybody tell you how to run it. You know, if you want to run an auto rack with a Civil Warrior or engine pulling it, someone real railroads say that's ridiculous. You know, that combination. But what the hell? If it's your railroad, you run it the way you want to. But if
Well,
you like the way that looks, no, I'm not going to tell you otherwise.
well said. That's almost just like mixing scale with semi-scale, or even somebody, you know, collecting something that they might like, but you as a person might not like. You know, it's
Sure,
all about it's all about, you know, making yourself happy and really
sure.
enjoying the things that you love the best.
That's what a hobby's supposed to be. It's not something. You know, we used to kid around about the rivet counters.
Hmm.
That you know how you know someone will point out, well, you know that engine just here's some little thing here or there that isn't perfect about it, and you know, and I don't have a problem with that. It's just that it's not my way of looking at things so much, but those that get joy and pleasure out of it, more power to them.
That actually kind of also links back into that comment that I made earlier about the model, the 700E that Lionel made. But
Yeah,
it also kind of reminds me of, and I'm not really too sure if I remember mentioning this to you, but I also worked for like a small non-profitable organization called the Lewis Junction Bridge Association. The idea of the organization itself is that we as um, a group, we would go out and try to look for actual sized train equipment, like whether it's a locomotive, a steam engine, a diesel, a boxcar, or whatever. And we would go out and try to take a look at every individual piece and try to see which ones need the best restoration. And the last project that we ever worked on was restoring an old Pennsylvania N5C caboose from right around 1913, and it's been in service all the way up until 2017, right before they took the old rail line canal out of the Lewis area where it used to operate at. So the caboose, as it is now, is currently sitting up on a siding, which is right next to the Lewis Library, which is about like 5 to 10 minutes away from my house. So every now and then we get like the big model train enthusiasts, or not, I shouldn't say model train enthusiasts, but once in a while we would get like the real big train fanatics down, and once in a while you would have, some people complaining that, oh, this is the wrong color, oh, it shouldn't really have, very few rivets on here, and it's got this and all that. And I say this with everybody else, apples and oranges or chocolate or vanilla, you take your pick. We're not really in it to be superficial, prototypical here and there. We're just really happy of the work that we've done on it. And we're also really proud of how everybody else is really amazed of, the work that we have accomplished to restore the whole thing from start to finish.
Sure. Well, anyway, this has been a pleasure meeting you guys, and I hope get some visits.
Okay, so we're gonna try to answer a few more questions for about like 5 to 10 minutes.
Okay.
And then I think we're gonna go ahead and start up each other's train layouts. So before we get to them, Phil, I do want to ask: are there any particular trains that you're going to be running for us tonight for the show?
No, I really I wasn't sure. I really didn't set it up to do it because I didn't know that there'd be time. But so that's the and I wasn't sure we could get it working with the camera and everything. So I don't quite have anything ready to go. It would take me some time to reorganize things.
Okay, and since I got the layout in the background here, I might as well show you guys what I'm going to be running for the rest of the show later tonight. Let me just see if I can get my camera flipped around. There we go. So both of my train layouts here are more or less 2 4x8 tables that are combined with each other. Now, even though I do have a relatively small amount of space in my train room upstairs, I always want to make sure that I pack enough action and accessories on the layout, and also trains running at the same time. So the engines that I'm going to be running tonight are mostly Lionel, whether it's conventional or TMCC. On the inner circle here, I have my dad's original 2035 Lionel K4 steam locomotive from, I think it was from 1950, early to late 50s. I can't exactly remember, but I also do have the original freight set that came with the locomotive. I got the New York Central gondola. I have the 2-dome Sunoco tank car and the SP caboose. On the outer loop of the main layout here, I am running my brand new Lionel Metka exclusive TMCC Texas Special GP9 with TowerCom and Crew Talk. I also got a couple of the later, not necessarily later, but the reproduction. Well, it came in the reproduction set of the 2245 Texas Special F3s that Lionel made back in 1999. So these are the passenger cars that I'm going to be running with the 2024 Lionel Texas Special GP9. And on the second layout in the back, I have my Lion Master Union Pacific SD90 Mac number 8049. This one comes with Odyssey speed, and the Texas Special does too. So the Odyssey locomotives I always consider to be the best runners on my layout, and I'm going to be running the SD90 Mac pulling up mixed freight. I got 2 scale Lionel box cars in the back over here, along with a couple of Atlas gondolas with a couple of pipes in them. Those are BNSF gondolas. I also have an MTH tank car in the back, and the 4 Other cars are mostly just a mix of Lionel standard note items. And then finally, on the top level here, this is my bumper section. I'm going to be running the Lionel number 50 gang car. Now I would extend the bumper section out a little bit further, but considering that the gang car is so erratic because it runs on AC power, I don't want the bridge over here to be wobbling so much, because if the gang car is going too fast on the bumper section, then I would be afraid that it would knock down the bridge section over here. So for the meantime, I'm just going to be running the bumper section just a little bit shorter this time around. Now, whenever I extend the bumper section, I would normally run the MTH trolley on the upper level. And actually, I can show it to you guys just real quick, but I know you guys have seen this a lot on my videos, but this is the MTH trolley that I normally run on the upper section. This is, of course, decorated in the Santa Fe paint scheme. But considering that I've run the trolley so many times on some of my other videos, I thought it would be a good idea to switch things around. I thought it would be a good idea to switch things, this time around. Okay, so do you still do some repairs on your trains, even if recent collection of your Lionel Legacy or MTH trains? You can still hear me, right?
Yeah, I'm still here. I don't see what you're seeing. I mean, I just see myself with my layout behind me, and I tried to change front camera to back camera, and it's telling me to. Oh no, it keeps showing either me or my layout, but not yours.
Oh, really?
So my front and back work. But the other thing is, I think my wife's kind of been calling me, and we're going to watch something a little bit later. I think it might have come on already. So I think I'm maybe ready to depart at this point, if that's and you can continue. But since I can't, I'm not seeing I'm not seeing your layout anyhow.
Oh, okay. All right. So why don't we do this? I think I'm going to go ahead and get the layout in the back all started up, and we'll finish off the rest of the live stream just by running the trains around my layout here. So for those of you guys who are still watching, I just want to thank you all for tuning in to our show tonight. And I also want to thank Phil, especially for joining me for the live stream. Phil, it was such a really great honor and a pleasure having you for tonight's episode. And we really can't wait to have you again at some point in the near future.
And let me just say, I will keep playing around with this, and maybe I can see your layout, but I don't want to, just in case I lose it. Thank you for all for coming, and I appreciate your comments, and I'm open to visitations anytime. Just give me a call. I'm pretty easy to find.
Absolutely. And once again, if you guys are also interested in checking out some of Phil's videos here on YouTube, once again, I'll make sure to leave them in the link in the description down below. So that way you guys can go check them out. So without further ado, I'm going to go ahead and hook up the layout in the back over here real quick. We'll get the trains up and running. We'll see some of the accessories in action on my end on the layouts here in the train room. And once again, thank you all for tuning in, and we hope to see you all next time.
Okay. Thank you.
Take care, Phil.
Right.
All right. So let's go ahead and get the camera flipped around. All right, guys, so we're going to go ahead and wrap up the video just by running the trains around for a few minutes. So once again, thank you all for tuning in. Enjoy the rest of the live stream for tonight. And we hope to see you all next time for the next episode on Railchief74. So without further ado, everybody have a great rest of the evening. Enjoy the rest of the video. And we hope to catch you all in the next one.
Next stop, coming up.